You know that feeling when you have to speak English
Yeah.
and suddenly, bam, it's like spotlight on you.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe your mind goes blank or you start second guessing like every single word. It's such a common thing.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. Our source is Blake from the English Pod community over on YouTube. He's been really open about his own, struggles and journey with tackling this exact fear.
Right.
And it's not just tips. He shares personal stories,
Yeah.
strategies that actually, worked for him.
Okay, so our mission here basically is to dig into Blake's experience and pull out some real actionable stuff. Things to help you, listening, feel more confident when you're speaking English. We're not just going to list his points. We want to get into the why behind the fear and, crucially, the how of moving past it.
Yeah, the how is key.
So, okay, where does this whole fear thing even start? Like the root of it?
Well, Blake really points to perfectionism, that deep down desire to get everything exactly right. He felt this huge pressure not to make any mistakes at all.
Terrified of messing up.
Totally. And he remembers his first time speaking English in front of people really vividly. Heart pounding, hands shaking, mind just empty.
I can almost feel that. I think a lot of people listening can probably relate to that exact physical reaction.
For sure. It's a very common feeling.
But thankfully, that's not where his story ends, right? There was a kind of turning point, something someone said.
Yes, exactly. A really pivotal moment. It came from his friend, Daniel. Daniel told him something like, the people who learn fastest are the ones who aren't afraid of looking silly.
That's interesting.
It really is. Think about how freeing that is. It just flips the script,
Yeah.
Suddenly it's not about being perfect right now. It's about, well, being okay with being a bit awkward while you learn.
Yeah, embracing the messiness of it. It gives you permission to just try, to learn by actually doing. And Blake really ran with that, didn't he? He started putting himself out there.
He did. He joined a language exchange group.
Yeah.
And the rule was English only.
Wow, straight in the deep end.
Yeah. And he's honest about it. It was uncomfortable at first. He made tons of mistakes. He says that plainly. But crucially, he started getting better. And he also noticed how kind and patient the others were.
That's such a good point. It's easy to imagine everyone else is judging you, but often people are just happy you're making the effort.
Right, exactly. He found most people were really supportive. They appreciated him trying to speak their language. It challenges that fear of judgment.
So this whole immersion thing, putting yourself in the situation, it really works. He wasn't just studying books.
No, he was using it in real life, even when it was hard.
And he came up with some clever tactics, too. I thought his approach to answering questions in conversation was really smart.
Oh, yeah, the storytelling. Instead of just short one-word answers.
Yeah, the yes or no kind of thing.
Yeah, he made a conscious effort to tell little stories. He gives this great example about describing a weekend hike. He added details, feelings,
Right, like getting a bit lost, but then finding an amazing view. Instead of just saying, it was good.
Exactly. It makes the conversation real, more human. And he noticed it built his confidence because he was actually connecting with people, not just reciting sentences.
Makes total sense. It shifts it from a test to just talking. Blake actually prompts listeners there, asking them to think about times they felt nervous and how they handled it.
Yeah, it's a good reflective question. Maybe think about that now.
Oh,
When did you feel that anxiety speaking English and what happened? What did you do? Which brings us to the next big thing Blake tackled. The fear of making mistakes.
Oh, the big one. That cringe feeling when you say the wrong word or your grammar's off. It can really shut you down.
It absolutely can. Blake talks about giving a presentation. His mind just froze. He started using wrong words. Classic scenario.
Yeah.
But his friend Anna was there, and she just quietly said, "It's okay, keep going. We understand you." Simple words, but they had a huge impact.
Wow. That shows the power of having supportive people around. But also, it's about how you frame those mistakes internally, right?
Exactly. That was the shift for him. Instead of dwelling on the embarrassment, he started seeing mistakes as, learning data.
Okay, learning data. I like that.
Yeah. Each error was a chance to learn a new word, or a better way to phrase something, or understand a grammar point. He actually started speaking more, almost expecting to make mistakes.
That's counterintuitive, but it makes sense.
Right. And paradoxically, as he made more mistakes, his confidence actually grew. The key takeaway there is focusing on getting your message across, on communication, not on flawless delivery.
So find your Anna, basically, or be your own Anna. And he also found value in learning with other people who were in the same boat.
Yes, definitely. He joined a conversation group, just with other learners. He talked about how relaxed it was. They'd practice everyday stuff, then slowly move to trickier topics.
And the focus wasn't on perfect grammar initially.
Not really, no. It was more about just getting comfortable speaking, letting the words flow, getting the speaking muscles working first.
Get the engine running before worrying about the perfect paint job. Yeah. And he had some quick tips too, like just taking a deep breath.
Sounds simple, but it works. That little pause can really reset things, and reminding yourself, everyone makes mistakes. Even native speakers.
True.
He tells this funny story about saying completely the wrong word in a shop, but the person was just helpful, not critical at all.
It reinforces that idea people are usually nicer than our fears tell us they'll be.
Totally. It makes you think back, doesn't it?
Right.
Times you were scared, pushed through, what actually happened. Probably not the disaster you imagined.
Right. Now, Blake also mentioned that pressure, that internal thing about wanting to sound perfect like a native speaker.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge trap.
Yeah.
He realized he was so hung up on his accent, on perfect grammar, that he often just freeze, couldn't speak at all. The perfectionism was actually stopping him.
Perfect is the enemy of good, like they say.
Exactly that. But then he had this breakthrough. He was in a cafe, and he just decided, you know what? I'm just going to talk, let go of the self-editing.
Just let it rip.
Kind of. And the surprising thing was, it was easier. He could express himself better, and his friends totally understood him, even with what he thought were imperfections.
That's such a key moment. Realizing that speaking is about trying, about confidence, not hitting some impossible standard. And storytelling came up again as practice.
Yeah, he really emphasized using it as a practice tool. He gave another example, like describing a walk in the park, meeting a friend for coffee. Telling that story helps you practice different tenses, add details, structure your thoughts.
And he said it helps with writing, too.
Yeah, which makes sense. It's all about getting comfortable expressing yourself clearly in English. Another technique he mentioned, surprisingly simple, was repetition.
Repetition, like drilling phrases.
Kinda, yeah. Just repeating simple sentences like, I'm going to the store, until they felt completely natural.
Huh. Why does that help?
Well, it builds automaticity. You stop having to think so hard about the basic building blocks, like muscle memory for language. It frees up your brain to handle the more complex stuff in a real conversation.
Okay, like learning chords on a guitar so you can eventually play songs.
Exactly. And he also tackled misunderstandings. Because they will happen, right?
Oh, for sure. Especially when you're learning.
He shared a time he misunderstood a colleague. But the lesson was, it's okay. It's fine to say, sorry, I didn't get that, or I think I messed that up. Ask for clarification.
Right. Don't just nod along pretending you understand.
No, focus on the process, the learning, not some perfect outcome. He used that great analogy, learning to ride a bike. You expect to wobble, maybe fall. That's part of it.
That's a really good way to frame it. You wouldn't beat yourself up for wobbling on a bike, so why do it with language? And Blake really drives home that feeling fear is just normal.
Yes, he really stresses that. It's okay and normal to be scared. He admitted his own early idea was that good at English meant sounding exactly like a native. Flawless.
Which is unrealistic for most people.
Totally. He realized language learning is messy. It's full of mistakes, awkward pauses, misunderstandings. And those aren't failures. They're signs you're actually trying, pushing yourself.
He even shared some of his own cringy moments, like freezing after hello. Makes him very relatable.
It does. And he reframed them. Those weren't embarrassing dead ends. They were turning points. They helped him understand that mistakes mean you're doing something. The crucial first step, he says, is that mental shift. Stop saying, I must be perfect, and start thinking, I want to learn and improve.
That mindset shift seems absolutely fundamental, takes the pressure off. And he wasn't just thinking about it, he was actively seeking out chances to speak.
Right, he was proactive. He didn't just wait for class. He joined that English speaking group. He talked about being nervous going in, but finding it was actually really positive. People were there to communicate, to help each other improve, not to judge grammar.
And again, that reinforces the idea that most people are supportive. They admire the effort. He also talked about setting smaller goals, right? Not trying to conquer everything at once.
Yes, small, achievable goals. Instead of aiming for a perfect hour-long debate, maybe just aim to introduce yourself or ask one question. He called them small wins.
Like building blocks for confidence.
Exactly. Like lifting weights, you start small and build up.
Yeah.
You wouldn't try to lift the heaviest weight on day one.
Makes sense. Like climbing a ladder, one rung at a time. And preparation helped him too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
He mentioned preparing for certain situations, maybe rehearsing a quick intro in his head or thinking about questions he might be asked. It reduces that feeling of being caught totally off guard. But he also stressed listening, active listening.
Not just waiting for your turn to talk.
Right. Listening to understand, yes, but also listening to get used to the sounds, the rhythm, the flow of English. Watching simple conversations, listening to podcasts.
Soaking it in.
Yeah. Training your ear. You pick up phrases, notice how people use words, get used to different accents. It all feeds back into your own speaking. Now, that fear of being judged, that's a biggie.
Huge. It can really paralyze you. Worrying what people think of your accent or mistakes.
But Blake's insight was, honestly, people are usually wrapped up in their own stuff. They're not analyzing your every word. And often, they actually think it's cool you're learning their language. Remember that story about the helpful shop assistant?
Yeah, they just wanted to help him find what he needed. They weren't grading his English.
Exactly. Good reality check. And he used visualization, too, which is interesting.
How did that work?
He'd mentally picture himself speaking confidently, maybe making a small mistake, but still getting his point across, still connecting. It's like mental rehearsal.
Okay, so prepping your brain for success.
Kind of. And he encourages you to think, what's the actual worst that could happen if I make a mistake? Usually it's really not that bad. Mistakes don't define you. Trying does.
It keeps coming back to embracing the process, doesn't it?
It really does. For Blake, overcoming the fear wasn't one magic moment. It was realizing perfection isn't required. Communication is the goal. That coffee shop interaction he mentioned, where he just decided to speak freely, that was a turning point because it started a habit of practice. Make speaking regular. Find those real-life chances.
Like the I like to do basketball example he gave.
Yeah. Funny, but it proves the point. The message got through, even if the grammar wasn't perfect. And he kept hitting those key themes. Small goals, active listening. But I loved his phrase, the just do it method.
Yeah. What's that?
When the fear hits, just speak anyway. Push through that initial resistance. Take action, even if it feels uncomfortable, like jumping into cold water.
Right. The anticipation is worse than the reality. Once you're in, you adjust. Blake then talked about how challenging but rewarding it all was, especially moving to an English-speaking place.
Yeah, he mentioned feeling anxious even with simple stuff at first. But the key, again, was changing the mindset. Stop seeing conversations as tests. Start seeing them as chances to learn.
And those small, everyday interactions were crucial building blocks.
Absolutely. The cashier, ordering coffee, asking directions, those little wins stacked up.
Yeah.
He mentioned ordering that specific cappuccino, almond milk and all, and realizing, hey, people are generally patient.
It's the cumulative effect of those small successes. And attitude matters too, he said, not just words.
Definitely. Smiling, eye contact, being less hard on yourself. Confidence isn't fixed, he argued. You can build it. And again, listening in real life on the bus, in the supermarket, to absorb how people really talk.
Getting that natural rhythm. And then he started tackling slightly bigger challenges, more formal situations.
Right. He talked about having to speak up in a work meeting. Nervous, of course. But he realized his colleagues cared about his ideas, not his perfect delivery. The lesson, keep going. Even when scared, even with mistakes. Progress happens through action.
Keep showing up, basically. And those achievable goals remained important.
Super important. Small goals. Gradually increasing the difficulty. And using those real-world practice chances, shops, work, friends, that's the best way to get better at thinking on your feet and sounding more natural.
And through it all, he really stressed being kind to yourself.
Hugely important.
Yeah.
Self-compassion. Know that mistakes are part of it. Celebrate the small wins. It's a journey. Be patient with yourself.
Right. And that big realization kept coming back. Communication trumps perfection.
He gave that example of a doctor's appointment. Clear, simple language worked. Understanding happened. Didn't need to be grammatically flawless. Letting go of the fear of errors, seeing them as learning fuel, that's the core.
And he even started talking to strangers, just for practice.
Yeah, using those casual moments. And he linked it back to listening again. Listening to others, how they speak, their tone, even how they handle little communication bumps. It all helps build your confidence.
Learning by osmosis, almost. And the progressive goals were still there.
Still key. Small daily goals and to make them a bit harder. And he mentioned recording himself speaking.
Oh yeah, that can feel awkward.
It can, but he found it super useful. You hear things you don't notice otherwise. You can track your progress. And seeing that improvement really boosts your confidence. He also compared language learning to any other skill.
Like learning piano or coding. Takes time, practice, patience.
Exactly. And mistakes are just expected, normal, part of getting better. He also mentioned practicing with partners or tutors, getting that support and feedback in a safe space. And then he shared a big milestone moment.
That presentation.
Yeah, successfully giving a presentation in English. That felt like a huge win, a real sign he'd overcome that deep-seated fear.
Must have felt amazing.
For sure. And his final wrap-up really emphasized that overcoming this fear is a process. It's about consistently taking those small steps out of your comfort zone, being patient, and knowing it's a worthwhile effort. It leads to real confidence and fluency.
He also mentioned pushing into more spontaneous chats, like customer service calls.
Yeah. Even though he felt anxious beforehand, the calls usually went fine. People were helpful. It just kept reinforcing that idea. People are often more understanding than we think.
And asking for feedback. That seems brave.
It does. But he framed it as wanting to improve, not inviting criticism. Asking, was that clear? Or, is there a better way to say that? Gave him really useful pointers. He also talked about discussing unfamiliar topics and dealing with accent concerns.
Yeah, the accent thing comes up a lot.
His journey was towards embracing his accent, focusing on being clear and confident, rather than chasing some perfect native pronunciation. But maybe the biggest shift he described,
What was that?
realizing that speaking English isn't just about getting the words right, it's about connecting with people.
Ah, right. Shifting the focus outwards.
Exactly. He gave an example from work, collaborating on something, understanding each other, working together, that was way more important than if every single word was perfect. Genuine connection matters more than flawless language.
That's a really powerful reframe. So bringing it all home, Blake's story shows that getting over the fear of speaking English is, well, it's a journey. It's about deciding to be okay with not being perfect, practicing all the time in different situations, changing how you think about it, seeing it as learning, not a test, and really focusing on connecting with people, not just on grammar rules.
Exactly. And it leaves you with a thought, doesn't it? What if you focus less on the fear of mistakes and more on the maybe joy or interest of actually connecting with someone using English? How might that change things for you? Maybe think about one small thing, one tiny brave step you could take today, inspired by Blake, to move past that fear just a little bit. Which part of the story really clicked with you?
It's a great question. And remember, the goal isn't perfection overnight, it's progress. Keep practicing, be kind to yourself. You can absolutely do this.